One of the most interesting Mount Fuji facts is that this volcanic mountain is actually 3 separate volcanoes, one on top of the other.
It's not a bird, it's not a plane, it's Superhero Slate. It's a modern podcast where we talk about everything that's great, like movies, TV, superheroes. It's Superhero Slate, oh yeah.
Hello everyone and welcome to Superhero Slate, the show where we run down the latest superhero entertainment news.
We love TV, movies, giant robots, and superheroes, so let's talk it all out.
My name is Chris Kaiju Dillard.
My name is Mike Jaeger Royer. Is that what we're doing? All right.
Mike Mecha Royer.
Ah, that's a good one.
Yeah. And this is a Superhero Slate review for Pacific Rim Uprising, if you couldn't tell.
Yeah, that's right, with all of our monster giant robot puns. So this isn't just a review for Pacific Rim Uprising. We went out of our way this week for this movie, and we found our closest 4DX, D-Box, 4 extra dimension, I don't know what you want to call it. It was an experience, if you will. So we are going to start off this review specifically talking about what it's like to see this movie or a movie in general in either a D-Box seat or a 4DX theater, and talk about, you know, what that was like, if we enjoyed it, if we didn't, if we'd go back, how much the tickets were, and then we'll jump into our thoughts of the movie, and then eventually we'll get into spoilers for the film. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, haven't got out to the theater, and just kind of want to know what it's like to be in these type of seats, you don't have to worry. We'll warn you before anything pops up that might spoil you.
Yep.
That might spoil you.
So this is very similar to our Ghostbusters review. We're not big Ghostbusters people, but we watched it so we could review the Ecto Cooler, and I feel this is the same thing. Well,
I don't know. I was a big fan of the first Pacific Rim, so I had kept hearing from people that if you're going to do these kind of 4D experiences, kind of find a big, loud, dumb movie, if you will. You know, and everybody kept saying about the Pacific Rim franchise when the first one was out, oh, you got to see this on the biggest screen possible, blah, 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 blah. So I was just like, well, we got 4DX screens in town, so I'm going to go check it out there. But so in my city of Los Angeles, we have a few 4DX theaters, which are theaters dedicated to all of the seats moving. There is some water that'll spray on you. There's like smoke machines at the front near the screen. The seats obviously move and rumble. They have like these pneumatic arms like inside of the chair, almost like a massage chair, so the chair can like punch back at you, which is pretty crazy. I think there was misters that came from the ceiling that were different than the water that would shoot out at you. And then there's also like compressed air that would shoot at you that made a very loud noise. It was kind of distracting. So that's kind of what a 4DX theater is. Now, I've been curious because I've been wanting to find out from you, what is a D-Box seat? Because technically, I think they're different companies that probably produce these things. So, Chris, let me know what is a D-Box seat? How far did you have to drive to find one? And how much were your tickets?
So, it sounds like you went to Disney World and went on one of their little 4D rides instead of a movie theater, if I was a betting man. But I went to... I think what D-Box is limited to, I believe, their Cinemark theaters, maybe, or like a certain company owns them. So, but we had to go to Cincinnati, so it was a 2-hour drive.
Oh man!
To get to this little thing, it's called the Cobb Liberty Luxury 15 and Cinebistro.
Wow!
Now, if you want a luxury cinema experience, you go to this Cinebistro, Mike. You can actually, there's a separate, so you go in and you buy your tickets and you go up an escalator and there's the concessions, but to the left is a Cinebistro where they will bring you food to your seat. So it's specifically theaters for that, where people can walk through and bring you your food and you can get it delivered to you in the movie theater.
All right.
Then on the other side is one theater, which was it has the D-Box seats. Now, yours sounds like a whole theater experience. Mine is just 2 rows of seats in the theater. Okay. So there are other people in the theater watching the regular movie in normal seats, but you pick your reservations and then they turn these seats on when you buy the ticket. So you can't just sit in one of these seats and get a rumble experience without them activating it through their system.
Gotcha.
So we had 2 of them in the center. We were like 4 people in the theater who had these things. The theater was actually pretty empty because it was 12:10 in the afternoon. So we went pretty early, but... the seat does rumble. There's no misting or anything, but it's kind of like being strapped to, like, I guess some amusement parks have them where you sit in the seat and the seat moves around. a little bit. It's like that, but you can also adjust the intensity. I don't know if you guys can do that in your theater, but we could adjust the intensity of like, do you want to feel everything or do you just want to feel little things?
Gotcha.
So, I went full in.
Was your screening also 3D?
No.
Oh, okay. Ours was 3D.
Yeah, no 3D. It was just regular 2D movie. I don't know if this theater, that screen may not have 3D capabilities because of being moved around with 3D like that. I figured like you'd lose the 3D effect pretty quickly. So
it sounds like you had a somewhat of a lighter experience, a little bit more chill, almost just like it's almost like you just spiced up the normal movie just a little bit. You just threw in a little extra pepper.
Yep, and the tickets were same price as an IMAX ticket, so we didn't have to pay full in to. Like, I didn't feel like we were breaking the bank going to one of these D-Box seats whenever, I could go to IMAX and just see a bigger screen. So
gotcha.
But that was it. We had a good time. I had mine. I went out. I cranked mine all the way to maximum. And as you can tell in this movie, anytime a robot fight starts, I had to like grip the sides because this thing will throw you and rock you around in your chair, especially with every bit of action in this movie. And I think to me, simply because it's not a whole theater experience, it took me about 10 minutes to adjust to the seat moving because it was like, you're like, oh my God, am I breaking it? Is this supposed to be happening? And then you get into the movie and you start to feel it and predict it. So overall, I mean, we made a weekend out of it. We spent all day. We went to IKEA because it was right down the road from an IKEA. We went to a place called Jungle Jim's International Market, and then we went to the movie. And the movie theater in itself is in a little shopping mall town called I think it's like Liberty Junction, Ohio.
Okay.
or Liberty Township, Ohio, and it's essentially like the outdoor malls, but they have like condos in the middle, and like you can walk around this little town, and it's like being in a town full of all your favorite stores. So it was really cool.
That is the Midwest on just full steam ahead. That just sounds like that is idyllic Midwest. You have like outdoor strip malls. You got high-end movie theaters. People out there shopping, having a good time. I'm glad it was there. Yeah. Did you have good weather? Because that usually will make or break.
No.
Okay.
No, we had like 10 inches of snow at this place. It was snowing so bad. We had whiteout conditions. Driving home, we had to go 20 miles an hour because you couldn't see the road or like anyone around you. It was real rough. I would not recommend that weather again. But overall, we got home. We had fun, and
I do have to thank you because you decided to join in on the fun. I was just the one pushing for this kind of extra theater experience, and you're just like, you know what? If you're gonna do it, I'm gonna go do it. You had to drive twice as far to get to one of those, so I appreciate that, Chris.
It's my pleasure because I want to see Avengers in this. If I was going to be completely honest with you,
all right.
But I wouldn't want to make my first going with this Avengers because you get distracted by the seats first, and then you watch the movie. So by getting accustomed to it, I can go and be like, I know what I'm getting into. I know what I can do, and I'm not going to watch Avengers first with this, but I'm going to probably take a weekend and load up my car and be like, everyone's going with me. We're going to try this because it's going to change. You think recliners are good? Wait till you try this. So, tell me about you. You didn't go alone. You had some buddies go with you, some friends of the show. And how was your complete cinema experience? Because it's not just a seat. Yours was the whole theater.
Yeah, so this was pretty intense. This was at the LA Live Regal in downtown Los Angeles. It took me about an hour to get there, but I had to fight a train and traffic. So I felt the sting of trying to locate this theater a little bit. Not as bad as you though. I didn't have to go through a literal blizzard to get to it. But the 4D experience is interesting because you have a whole theater dedicated to it, so everybody's in the same boat. It's a smaller theater, though, so you're not going to get a big, giant screen because I feel like outfitting a giant theater with all of these seats is a gigantic investment, even for a big theater in a really large market like Los Angeles. So, like, if you've ever gone to, like, a smaller movie theater and saw a movie on, like, one of the last couple weeks it was in there, they always put it in kind of one of the smaller theaters in the house. So that's kind of what the room was like, and I don't know if I could estimate how many chairs were in there off the top of my head. I don't know, somewhere between like maybe 50. So it was a smaller crowd for sure. But like I said earlier, all the seats definitely move. It was a 3D glasses type of deal. The way it was set up, like each row is kind of divided into 4 seats. Divided into 2 seats. I'm trying to remember now. So each of those kind of pods all move. And everything is synced up to the screen, as I'm sure you know. Even something as simple as like a camera pan will be mimicked by the chairs. So if the camera's like panning up, our seats will move up a little bit, and the chairs will also move. And if it pans to the right, our seats will slowly like swerve, pan to the left. So it was kind of cool just kind of seeing camera pans match up. There's these air compressors that are really loud that will shoot you whenever you want to feel like air. So they'd make a noise like psst, psst, psst. So that kind of got a little annoying, but at least they're always firing when some sort of big action was happening on the screen. So it's not like I was getting blasted in the face with air when I was trying to hear very important dialogue. So that wasn't the biggest deal in the world. But you are right. These chairs, they totally move, and they're bucking you around. So I took this theater, I was allowed to bring alcohol into it. So I bought a beer at the concession stand, and I brought it in. But the beer was in a plastic cup. It wasn't like a Coke that had like a lid on it with a straw. So like I sat down and the chair started moving. I chugged my beer as fast as I could because I was like, this beer is literally going to spill. So I would not recommend these chairs with a drink full to the brim. So drink your drinks about halfway before these rides get going, because it was pretty crazy. But I think I could totally agree with you where if you want to see a movie that you're dying to see, like Avengers Infinity War, do not watch it for the very first time in this theater, and especially your very first time in these types of seats, because it's distracting. It's adding to your experience for sure. But if you're trying to like really get involved in like character development, story arcs, things like that, the experience is just gonna throw you for a loop. But when you're just watching big dumb robots fight, it's pretty cool. Another element I also forgot our theater had was up in the corners of the room. There's kind of these 2 LED panels. I don't know exactly how big they were, but so when something on the screen would flash, the LED lights would flash as well. So you'd kind of get in the periphery of your eyes this flashing. So it's this very strange experience. It's kind of all coalescing to, I would say, almost something really neat. It's kind of weird to say. At times it did kind of feel like just random crap was happening, and sometimes it was synced to what was happening. Sometimes it was off just by a little bit, which would kind of ruin the magic. But I mean, out of everything that's going on, it's pretty impressive. We would watch some trailers, and then before the movie would start, everything would go black for a second, and I would just imagine there's people like behind the screen with like giant valves and wrenches, like just trying to maintain this massive system that's syncing up with the audio and visual. So it's a really interesting feat. I would say this type of technology is really hitting off at like you said, like an amusement park where you have a really tight experience. 3 or 4 minutes, everything's synced up and perfect. It's been workshopped to death because these things are staying in the park forever. I mean, at my theater, at my 4DX theater, this is going to be the only week to see Pacific Rim 4DX, because next week it's going to be Ready Player One, and there is only one 4DX theater in this house, and I'm nearly positive Ready Player One will be taking that spot. So you really have to jump in for this movie. So it makes you wonder, they're doing all this effort to sync this stuff up for, approximately 7 days of showing this movie. And really you're going to make your lion's share of the money off of just the weekend. So I don't know if these things are really going to take off and really replace every movie theater house, but I would not want them to. Yeah, I don't want to say it's not worth the money, but our tickets were not cheap. They were $30 a ticket. So you're looking at a little bit of an investment, especially with the family of 4 that sat down next to me. They all sat down. I just looked at them and I just saw $120 kind of just hover above their head. And I was like, wow, this is an expensive night out for them. And there was 2 parents and their 2 children, probably maybe like 5 or 6. And as soon as the chair started moving, the kids freaked out and sat on their parents' lap the whole time. So it's just like, well, you just wasted that on your kids. They're not even using those seats. So it was kind of nice because I had a little bit more breather room around me because there's no one in the chair next to me. So there was there was an interesting point in the movie, no spoilers, but there's a point where there's a person using kind of like a giant machine gun on one of the Jaegers. Mm-hmm. And every bullet that comes out is like, every shell is like the size of a car, right? So it's this big giant gun shooting one of the kaijus, and then when every bullet goes off, the chair kind of punches me in the shoulder, and then at the same time, the LED lights are flashing up in the corner of the thing, and I was like, okay, this is a perfect moment where kind of everything's coalescing. My chair's vibrating, it's punching me in the back, I'm getting these light flashes. I think maybe the compressed air was going off, I don't exactly remember, but I was like, oh, this is really cool. So like, when you get 3 or 4 things really syncing up and logically making sense to what's happening on the screen, it's really, really fun. Yeah, I'm not seeing Avengers Infinity War opening weekend on this. I don't really know if I'm going to go back to it. When I got home and my wife asked me to kind of sum up the experience, I was just like, I don't know if I'll literally ever do that again. But if for some reason our closer theater had some of these seats, I might consider it. But I don't think it's worth the journey in my head. So if you happen to live down the street from one of these things and you can just kind of stroll up and you got a little extra cash, I think it might be a fun experience. At least you can tell your friends about. But it's not going to revolutionize the movie theater. And actually, it's a little comforting knowing that in my heart of hearts, I still think the best way to watch a movie is just on a nice screen in 2 dimensions with just a comfortable chair and no kids screaming. That's really all I can ask for. And then it's just up to the movie to just be a good movie, and I'll have a good time. So if you think the movie maybe is not going to live up to your expectations, maybe go with this really big distraction and maybe you'll have a better time. So I think that's the best way I can sum up a 4DX theater in kind of that sporadic way.
Well, I think the difference here might be, since I didn't have, again, what is essentially what I experience on every Disney ride at Disney, because, I mean, those are great in small doses, but I think my thing I noticed with this movie is there are parts where the people are just talking and the seats don't move. And then all of a sudden, the next thing is there's an explosion, or you're like some simulation, or something's happening, and then you're getting rocked around out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And that's like, that threw me, that brought me out of the movie more, because I'm like, okay, I'm sitting here, I'm very comfortable, nothing's happening. Oh gosh, I'm being chucked forward across the seat. And I'm like, okay, I guess yours sounds a little more intense. I would recommend the D-Box over the 4DX, it sounds like, because it's not everything. It's still just a normal movie-going experience with a little bit of rumble-tumble.
Yeah, and it sounds like you had a little bit more of an affordable price point, where it sounds like it's not as big of a upfront decision. Like dropping $30 on a movie, like that takes a little bit of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. And I mean, 30. I think we spent 30 for the two of me and my wife together. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I mean, I agree with you. It's gimmicky. Everything about this is gimmicky. Mm-hmm. But in the future, 10, 15 years, I would love to see this in video games more so than movies. Mm-hmm. And as much as I've always said Pacific Rim is a great video game more than it is a movie, I was happy to experience this. But I would say touch this in with a VR head. When we get to the point where we can watch movies with VR headsets and we have this going on, I'm all about that.
Ooh, yeah, that would be crazy.
But until that point, the flat screen with you being chucked around and stuff and being water spit at you, it's just a little... That's a little much. The moving's okay, but it needs to have the next level of screen with it as well, I feel. So I think it'd be a great VR system.
Yeah, I think one last caveat. I will neither confirm nor deny if one of the friends sitting next to me was on a legal substance in California, possibly a legal substance in the state where you live, and he was having a great time at the beginning of the movie. So you could, if you want to add like your own fifth dimension, if you want to bring a fifth dimension in with you to the movie theater, that might be a little extra fun there. So overall, I don't feel like I threw my money away. It was an interesting experience, and I would say give it a shot. I would say don't pass it up if you have a chance. But I think we have a movie to talk about here actually now.
Yeah, there was a movie actually along with the experience, believe it or not. We went and saw Pacific Rim Uprising. I was going to see it anyway, so I was kind of... I mean, I like the first one. I'm not in love with the first one, but I mean, I enjoy it. I love what it was. And I feel bad watching it on my home TV because I'm like, this was meant to be experienced in a large scale. You have large beasts and large mechs in Pacific Rim, and if you shrink it down to something in your little TV, you're like, oh, I'm not getting the full effect of the word kaiju, really. So this sequel, this is 5 years after the first one's been released. I can't believe it's been 5 years since the first one. It picks up with kind of new characters, but some throwbacks of the original ones in there. And to kind of, like you said, Mike, we always bury the lead a little bit here. This movie actually surprised me. I was surprised several times in this movie. While I don't think it's a very deep movie, it's very shallow. I was very happy to be surprised that it wasn't a predictable script kind of along the way. So that did give me a better feeling about this movie than just being like, okay, this is monsters punching robots, great. That would have been straight for the bar. But since the story had a couple surprises, I was very, very pleasantly, I don't know, I was happy to watch it in the theater. So what about you, Mike? What did you think of the movie of itself? Were you able to actually watch it, or were you too busy watching the theater around the movie?
No, I mean, I was able to take it all in, and unfortunately, I think Pacific Rim Uprising missed the bar. Unfortunately, I really like the first movie, even though I think it has some significant flaws that I can really overlook because the rest of the movie is just so good to me. The first Pacific Rim, I love the scale of the movie, how all these robots just feel huge and lumbering, and the monsters just feel extremely threatening. A very simple story told pretty straightforward all the way from beginning to the end. Even though you have like characters actors like Charlie Hunnam like trying to put on his best American accent, and he's just kind of like a little bit of a doofy character. I was still engaged. Obviously, it's Guillermo del Toro's vision, kind of connecting to all of his lovely Japanese monster past that he loves. But it also has a pretty slow second act of Pacific Rim, the first one. But you get over it because you know the goods are coming if you've seen it before. Pacific Rim Uprising, they're adding a lot of new interesting elements to the film that I won't spoil just yet. Some of them pay off, and I think some of them are a little wasted. We have some interesting character turns, which I would say did surprise me. I didn't see some of those twists happening, but overall, I didn't really like how they played out in the end. This is a sequel. This isn't some sort of a reboot. I know it's 5 years later, so some of the original cast returns. Some of them are just briefly mentioned. We don't really know what happens to them. Some of them are dispatched pretty quickly, which is a little unfortunate. So I was a little disappointed there, because you would think if you're going to kind of dispatch the old cast, I think your new cast needs to be strong, and I don't think John Boyega can carry this whole movie on his own. This movie has a lot of teens in it. I don't know exactly if they're trying to reach a different market with this movie when they were writing the screenplay, but most of these teen characters in the movie really kind of grind my gears a little bit. But, eventually they get into robots and they start fighting, and, you're kind of getting back into your original Pacific Rim love. As you can see from the trailers, there's a lot of action in this movie that happens in the daytime, so it's interesting to see the monsters and the robots fight during the day. It feels a little less intimidating, and it feels a little bit more like a Saturday morning cartoon without the edge when it's not at night. So I don't know, maybe we could have maybe done a little something different there. But
I don't know why you're looking for edge in a movie of monsters versus robots.
Well,
but go on.
So I rewatched the first Pacific Rim just a few hours before I saw this movie, and I know when you think of the first Pacific Rim, you just instantly think about the big, awesome robots and monsters because that's what's awesome about it. But the first movie is dark. There is really not a whole lot of moments of humor. You really only get the humor from the comedic relief of the two scientists of Charlie Day and his.
You know why? Because Charlie Hunnam can act his way out of a paper bag. I mean, to me, so I mean, I'm gonna just go ahead and say I disagree with your I hate the actors in the first one. I love the actors in this one. So I mean, just to play my cards a little bit, I cannot stand Charlie Hunnam in the first one. Like he is a wet cardboard paper bag person, and he couldn't do anything. And this one, despite John Bo-jaegar overacting, overreaching, I was at least like, oh, he's funny. Like I can at least he's at least got a little more flavor to him than that. But yeah, sorry to interrupt. I just want to go on.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying, I don't have really an issue with John Boyega. I actually had this kind of interesting moment in the theater where I was just like, this kind of feels like a classic 1980s action movie sequel for a moment, because that's kind of what happened back in the 80s. You would have this kind of original kind of sci-fi action concept, think like something like Terminator, and they would make one movie. You would get one movie, and then people would end up liking it, and then the studio would go, oh, maybe we should make another one of these since they liked it. So then a couple years later, not like 2 years later or 1 year later, like some of these franchise movies now have been like programmed to just churn them out. This one comes out a whole 5 years later, and it's a similar type of thing where it's just like, oh, well, how do we kind of continue the story? Let's have one of the main characters have a kid. Enter John Boyega. Let's kind of put new lifeblood in this movie. Let's add some younger, new characters. So it was kind of fun to have that experience again of a movie that is a sequel 5 years later. So you kind of have to, you still have your universe there, but you have to move everything into the future a little bit. It can't just connect and continue, because after all those times, and if it's not all planned out, you can't get all the actors back. So I kind of like that feeling again. I just don't think it all panned out for them going forward. So that was a fun experience. But I went in with low expectations because I know this is just a dumb robot movie. But it just didn't live up to the first Pacific Rim. That doesn't necessarily make it a bad movie, but that means I can still point out things that I didn't like. So I think I would like to jump on the spoilers real quick, and we can kind of wrap this thing up and maybe talk about some specifics that we liked and didn't like.
So just before we do, I think this is Pacific Rim and Uprising are yin and yang, where the first one falls short, this one picks up, but where the first one was good, this one falls short. So to me, I actually even them out about the same level. Not amazing, nothing I'm gonna go watch. My wife hasn't even seen the first one yet, and we don't own a copy. I couldn't even find a copy to watch before we went and saw this one. So I'm like, I put it a little bit above a middle ground, but like they both, where one falls, the other one succeeds, and the other way. So I would say if you like the first one, go watch this one. If not, you can definitely wait till it hits home theater and rent it. Redbox or Netflix it and probably still be okay. So
I would strongly recommend. I don't think you can watch this movie without have seen the first one. I know we're saying it's just a big dumb fight 'em up movie, but there's a lot of callbacks to the first one. They kind of rely that you kind of know a little bit about this world before going in, and you'll see some flashbacks from the first movie without any context in the second movie. So yeah, make sure you watch that first one if you want to really understand anything that's going on in the second one.
My wife didn't have a problem. She's like, there was only one part she didn't understand, and that's we'll talk about in spoilers. But once I told her, she's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So, so I guess you say see it or not see it, Mike, before we jump into spoilers.
No, I think it's fine to see. Just know what you're getting into.
Okay, all right. And 40X or not 40X?
I think just
find
help
the movie.
I think find an IMAX screen, just a normal IMAX screen. I think will be fine.
All right, there we go. All right, spoilers. The only part my wife didn't understand was Charlie Day had a brain in his apartment.
Yeah, that was an interesting reveal, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I was like, but that wasn't even like the twist. The twist was much later. But I mean, yeah, like he just had that brain sitting there. And did it not have the same name as the other human brain that they train with? Were they both named Alice?
I have no idea. I thought the human brain was possibly named Sarah. I do not remember.
Okay, that's cool. I don't. That was like the only thing I was like, I don't remember. Can't pause and go back. But anyway, spoilers, Mike. What do you got going on for us here?
All right, so here we go. I just want to go ahead and jump into the first thing that kind of bugged me with the movie is I know it's going to sound weird talking about like contrived kind of plot lines, but the kaiju's master plan of throwing their kaiju blood with the rare earth metals of Mount Fuji, it's not like it didn't make any sense, but it was just a dumb plan for these monsters and these precursor aliens, which doesn't really sync up to the first movie at all. So they tried to plot it out with this kind of holographic map in this movie that like, oh, let's look at all the kaiju attacks that's ever happened. Oh, we can see they're all drawing a straight line to Mount Fuji. Oh, why is that happening? Well, that's not what happened in the first movie. The kaiju were popping up all over the Pacific Rim, just randomly kind of trashing cities. They weren't all making like a beeline to Mount Fuji, so I don't understand if they just wanted us to just not pay attention to that and just like, you know, just kind of like glaze over our eyes and just be like, okay, that's what they're trying to do. And I don't think that really led up to a very interesting conclusion of the movie. So we have like this big hybrid kaiju kind of climbing up Mount Fuji, which I presume he was just going to jump into the volcano. I don't really know what the monster's plan was once he got up to the top. So it's just like, oh, how are we going to take this guy out? We're just going to punch him hard from falling down. And I was a little unfortunate because that was the climax. There wasn't anything after that. And if you compare that to the first Pacific Rim, where they're freaking like going through a wormhole, they had to fight these kaiju underwater, and then they're falling through a wormhole, they're exploding. They're exploding this Jaeger in another dimension. We get to finally see these other aliens that are connected to it. We get to see their kind of kaiju form. They like barely escape through these escape pods, and at the very end, they're just kind of floating in the ocean, kind of taking in their triumphant win. And it's just like comparing the ending is it's a no-brainer. The first one was so much better. So I was very disappointed in the ending, which is kind of not how you want to leave a movie.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think I'm the other way. I really, the more I sit and think about it, the more I really don't like the first movie. And I guess it's just because I forgot Charlie Hunnam was even in it until you mentioned that. And now I'm like, I really don't like that actor in the first one. So it's hard for me to actually come back and be like, okay, well, what do I like about it? But I mean, while it may be goofy, everything about this is goofy, I think this movie should have been 2 movies. And I think because they took 5 years to make this, they might have jammed so much into this, because I would have loved to see more of the training, because they're like, okay, here are our 5 biggest Jaegers in the fleet, and then the big twist is that the AI robots were actually little kaiju brains or something like that took over the Jaegers. I'm like, well, that's really interesting, but they just kind of took out all these big robots really quickly, and we didn't get to see a lot of that fighting.
Yeah, and that was an interesting plot point when they were going to do the kind of the drone Jaegers, because this movie is obviously very much influenced by kind of a Japanese anime and manga with big fighting robots, and that was a very prominent plot line in Gundam Wing, which is an anime that I grew up watching, where there was a human man Gundams, and then all of a sudden somebody's like, oh, we're going to make mobile dolls now, and it's going to be computers kind of controlling these robots. So I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like I can kind of see that logical conclusion of, let's get the humans out of these giant robots because that's very dangerous, and bring in the AI. So I was like, yeah. I'm vibing with that plot line, you know.
But and they set up the creator of these AI, Shao, to kind of be like this cold-hearted bitch who you think is the evil person, because they play her up to be evil so hard that she's like, don't you make me question your loyalty, kind of thing. And I'm like, okay. Well, they over the top her at the beginning, and then somehow redeem her by the end. So like, there should have been 2 movies in here. There's obviously a 2-movie divide somewhere.
So I think this is an unintended consequence of us knowing a little bit too much about the international movie market, because when I was watching this, I was like, there's no way the Chinese businesswoman is going to be the bad guy, because they want to make as much money off of this movie in China as possible. This woman will not be the bad guy. And then at the very, very end, she is one of the heroes, mobile piloting the little tiny Jaeger. And I was like, okay, there it is. Yeah. There it is. They had to get that Chinese box office. They're not going to make her the bad guy.
Yeah, but I mean, also, the first one kind of led into that with the character Mako Mori as well, who obviously was going to be targeted because she had the vote. Like, that part was very predictable, but I did not know that it was actually Charlie Day's character who was making everybody, like, putting the kaiju brains in the remote pods, and then I guess they didn't explain how they took over the robot or how they expanded, but that was very interesting. I would have loved to see more of these, like kaiju blend robots kind of go on. They just kind of all look like one robot, and I was like, but I'd like to see more, because the kaiju have the varieties. They have everything in this has a crazy ass name. Like every mech has a name. I forget, there's Gypsy Avenger in this one. Obsidian Fury was the evil version of that, which was just a color swap version with 2 swords.
Names are badass. Like, if you're ever looking for like an online username, just find a name of a Jaeger. It's already really rad.
Yeah. And they even gave like the kaiju some really crazy names. But I did not see Charlie Day actually being the evil person here. I thought he was just being played, but he was the one playing everybody else. And I thought that twist was really actually surprising, because they don't give that away in the trailer, and I really thought they'd give something away like that, you know.
Yeah, it was surprising, but I feel like I'm asking too much of this movie, but I felt like if the movie had a little bit more depth, maybe we could have played with the fact that like Charlie is not the bad guy. He is a good guy that has been kind of taken over by the precursors, and they never really did that. Like, they're just straight up like hating him, they're punching him, they're strapping him to chairs. They're never really kind of going into the idea of just like, hey, this is our like scientific friend that literally helped us save the world in the last movie, and we're just kind of treating him like garbage right now. So I know that's probably something that they could possibly develop in a third movie, but when you try to cram so much stuff into one movie, you just got to be like, we have to cut all of the scenes where we develop sympathy for Charlie Day's character. Sorry.
It does go very, very quickly, because, I mean, they pick up, what's his face? Idris Elba's kid. I can't think. Is it Jake? Is it Jake in this one?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah,
you can just call him John Bo-jaegar.
Yeah, it was Jake Pentecost. They pick him up, and now he's back in the military. And then next thing you know, he's made up with this buddy, Scott, played by Scott Eastwood. Like, they move everything really quickly for plot's sake. So I wish this would have been 2, but at the same time, man, when they start fighting, like the Jaegers fight each other, and then versus the other stuff, I was really into it. Like, I really like the action scenes in this one.
Yeah, I would say that out of all the parts of the movie that came close to kind of reaching the first movie's peak, it was the Jaeger fights. I like the kind of new additions to the weapons. That kind of that gravity whip was really, really cool. Everybody's got swords now. I felt like they kind of maybe took the wrong lesson from the first movie. Of the reason the sword was so badass in the first movie was because we didn't know they had it, and they used it as a last-ditch effort to kind of slice that pterodactyl thing in half. But now in this movie, they're just like, you have a sword, you have a sword, you have a laser sword, you have a laser whip. We all got melee weapons now, and they all pop up. So sometimes it was cool, sometimes I felt like it was a little too much. But overall, I liked some of the new weapons. Like I said when I was talking about the 4DX experience, I like that big machine gun when that one Jaeger had to be piloted by 3 people. She kind of goes down to the core of the robot.
Idea with 3 people in one Jaeger.
Yeah, that was badass. I looked this up, and it's a little unfortunate. So I don't know if you noticed this, but John Boyega was like an executive producer on this movie, and I don't believe it was just for credit. He had some creative influence in this movie, and I think I'm going to have to disagree with him here, where John Boyega said the one thing he didn't like about the first one was that all the robots moved too slow and it wasn't very exciting. So he brought in a specialist that worked on one of the new Star Wars movies, I don't remember what it was, to kind of retool how the Jaegers moved. And they ended up moving a lot faster in this movie, which I don't know if I liked. I kind of liked the first one then when they were lumbering a little bit more. It made every punch feel just a little bit more impactful. In this one, they're kind of running around a little bit more like it's an anime movie or something like that.
Well, I think it's also an evolution, because it's been 10 years in that universe since anyone came out of the ocean. So all they've got is time to tweak and retool all their things without actually having to repair and fight again, you know.
Well, no, there was a whole repairing montage, if you don't remember, in this movie. Apparently, these big giant robots can be scrapped together pretty quickly after being totally decimated like 48 hours earlier.
Put right back in pristine condition at that.
Hey, little girl, you know how to fix things, right? Let's send your 11-year-old ass up into this robot, and I think you can get it working in a couple days, right?
I did think it was funny that all the kids in the thing were all different nationalities, like in her little squad bunker there. Like, she was the token white person. Everyone else was from another country or or skin color, and then the one kid actually died, and it kind of just left it off at the end. Like, there wasn't a thing for him, even though he kept making boob jokes.
Yeah, and he kept talking about how he wanted his like funeral to be with all these Jaeger salutes, and then he just died. And then at the end of the fight, they're all like jumping up and down, going like, "Yeah, we won the day." And it's like, dude, your friend back there got literally crushed by a giant monster, and you're celebrating right now. Maybe just take it down a notch.
The tonality there was. Yeah, I agree with that. But he was apparently a big actor in Diary of a Wimpy Kid movies. In case you want to go back and watch that.
Well, I don't.
My wife does. The fifth grade kids love those. But I mean, overall, the seats to me made this movie that much more fun because I felt like every punch and every hit in this, and I really liked the battles because they didn't just win every time. I think that was a very important thing. They didn't just go up against the kaiju or the first mech and just take him out in the first go round. And I thought that was very important to me, that they didn't just the good robots weren't always overpowered. You know what I'm saying? So I did enjoy that they weren't easily, I guess, winning left and right.
Yeah, I would be remiss to not bring up the two pet peeves that this movie did touch on, which drive me crazy, and I wish they didn't do it. First one was over ridiculous kind of hacking computer screens. There was visualizations of them trying to regain control of these piloted Jaegers, and there's this weird visualization of like, oh, the virus is taking over the screen, so let's have like all this red light come over the screen, like eating it up, but like, oh, we're fighting back against the virus, so the hole is opening a little bit more. And I was like, oh, this is so stupid. Show me a robot punching something. And then they did the other thing where this should just be abolished from all movies going forward because it is so uninteresting. I never ever want to see a character trying to act like they're diligently pressing a tablet screen. Just before Mako died, she's trying to do this last-ditch effort of sending them out a data packet, and she's like, boop, 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 trying to like make this tablet look cool. And then when Charlie Day sends his weird robots that can morph kaijus together, I don't that was not explained. I understand what was happening, but it was not built up in any way. And he's doing the same thing where he's on top of the building. He's just like, oh, well, I'm just gonna fix this. Boop, 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 boop. And I was like, okay.
He had a lot of time on top of that building, just watching everything happen.
Yeah, no more tablets. No more of that nonsense. It was stupid. So let's abolish those two things from all movies going forward, and maybe I'll have a little bit of a better time.
Mm-hmm. I would like to play a video game on this. Again, just like the first one, I would love to see a good story-based Pacific Rim video game. Maybe you have a home base where you can build up your Jaegers and then, go out and fight with them whenever like there are incursions. Mm-hmm. I think that would be really cool. But I don't know, that's really my walkaway here is I really just want the video game yet again. Same, I said after the first one, I really like a video game in this. But also, did you see the Gundam reference?
Yeah, the Gundam statue, that was cool. I like that.
That was a pretty cool thing. Overall, again, I don't think I will own this one, much like I don't own the first one. But do you think they're going to make a third one?
It's going to depend on the box office for sure. I mean, the first one just barely made enough money internationally, I felt like, to warrant a sequel, which is why we saw it 5 years later. If for some reason there's a third one, I would love it if Guillermo came back. I feel like he really put his personal touch on the first movie, which is why we got all these awesome monsters, Jaegers. We got all the awesome names. The freaking base where the Jaegers hang out is called a Shatterdome, which I just think is like the coolest name ever for a home base. So I think all that stuff would be amazing, like you said, in a video game. So I tell you what, I'm not excited for a third one because the Stinger kind of credit scene was just really stupid, where he was just like, well, you tell them to stop coming because we're coming for them.
You know what that reminds me of? You know what that exact scene's from?
What's
Independence Day 2.
Oh, yeah, I've heard some comparisons between this movie and Independence Day 2, which is not a good comparison you want to draw.
No, so, but that exact scene was the same thing. Like, they had the crazy sign. It's like, oh, we know where the aliens are. We're going to go to their homeworld. And I was like, oh, God. Oh, no. But I thought this movie was actually going to go to the other aliens' homeworld somewhere in there. But
nope.
They didn't do it.
Nope. They didn't do any of that. So,
as of right... Well, I was gonna say, as of right now, the movie has made back exactly its production budget. So on the first weekend, so we'll see.
All right.
We'll see how it goes.
Well, good luck, Uprising. I would be curious to see a third one. I don't think I'll be going back to the theater when 4DX when the third one comes out. I might even wait for a digital release for the third one just because this one just disappointed. It just didn't live up to at the end of the day, I just didn't have as much fun in this movie, even with my seat moving and lights flashing at me and water squirting at me and just going out with my friends. So, which is a little unfortunate, but there's some fun robots punching. But first one will always hold a special place in my heart. So there you go. I think that's all we have to say about Pacific Rim Uprising.
Yeah, I don't like the first one as much as Mike does. So to me, I was okay with this one because I don't like the first one as much. So depends on where. I guess it depends on where you hold the first one. I guess is where you're going to enjoy this one. Is what it sounds like. So, but that's for our special review.
I think you need one more special so you can hit that fourth dimension.
Well, I was trying to get to the 4DX. But I kept saying I was going to get the D-box seats for the D-bag because that's what I was calling myself. You understand that reference?
Oh, Chris.
But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed our review, at least for our experiences in the 4DX theaters and the D-box seats. And let us know what you thought of Pacific Rim Uprising if you saw it or will see it. So other than that, Mike, if people want to know what you're up to, where can they find you at?
Well, they can find me at Mike Royer Design on Instagram and Twitter. And you can read my webcomics at pickledcomics.com. Chris, people want to find out what you up to, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter, Valdan, VALDAN. Be putting together some IKEA furniture today. See how that turns out for me.
Hell
Wish
yeah.
me luck. Also, head over to YouTube, search the DNN, or head over to Comic UI. We have a convention coming up in 2 weeks, Mike. Really excited for C2E2. Hoping to get some interviews.
That's the big one, man.
It's my mecca for the Midwest, and so on and so forth. And we'll be representing Superhero Slate there, or at least I will. But if people want to know more about Superhero Slate, maybe our regular news show we do every week, where can people find us at?
Well, as always, please visit superheroslate.com. That's the best place to find all the avenues we host our little show, because I'm sure if you're not subscribed yet, you're going to want to do that. So you can find us on iTunes, YouTube, Google Play Music, SoundCloud, Stitcher. You can get us right in your email inbox every week if you like it that way. And you can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We promise we won't steal your personal social media data, because I don't even know how to do that, so you don't have to worry. If you want to get some Superhero Slate merch, just head on over to superheroslate.com/store. If you're a fan of the show, please consider leaving us a review wherever you listen. We really love that. We love the stars. We love the thumbs up, the comments, the shares. We love all that. If you want to be a super fan of the show, if you like that, if you want to put that on your business card, super fan of Superhero Slate Podcast, we'll let you do that as long as you just share the show with a friend, share the show with a buddy, and we will be here every week. And we're cruising into the blockbuster season / summer movie season, so we're going to be having a lot of double episode weeks coming up. Avengers Infinity War is right on the cusp. Deadpool not long after that. There's a lot of stuff out there. You can check out our spoiler cast for Jessica Jones, which just dropped a couple of weeks ago. So listen to all that and make sure you're subscribed. And we do a daily news episode every week. So yes. Stay tuned for that.
Yep, we're about to do that right now, Mike. So let's go do it.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
See ya.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe.
You've given me more knowledge in this couple seconds than I did for the entire movie we watched.